Welcome to Season 2 of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki Starr, and today we are talking about changes. We're talking about changes today. And I want to talk to you about two types of changes specifically and how they are both powerful and potent to support your next level expansion. So I want to talk about changes in a way that they are super positive because they are. And everything in life is about our perspective, and the way we receive things are connected to the stories and the meanings with which we tell about everything that happens to us. And the only constant in life is change. Change is inevitable. It is a natural part of life. We see it in the life cycle of nature with the changes of the season. We see it with the change of the sun throughout the day and the change of the moon phases. Change is just a natural part of life. And the more we can get comfortable with change, the easier our life experience. And the reason why change is so beautiful is because every time something changes, we don't really know what's going to happen. And in that unknown lives infinite possibilities. And sometimes change also happens in the direction that we know it will happen. And I want to empower you so that you can be the driver of change in your life and consciously create it where you can for expansion and for your greatest becoming. So the two types of changes that I want to talk to you about today are the ones that you create and the ones that just seem to happen out of nowhere. And oftentimes you might think like, oh no, like I don't want this to happen. But on some level, you are creating that as well. And I'm going to talk about how that works on the energetic planes of reality. And so first, let's talk about the conscious changes that we make. So if you feel stuck in your life at all, or if you're wanting even more and you're grateful for what you have, but you want more, I always recommend creating conscious change. If something is not going the way you like, if you want to see something different happening in your life, if you feel stuck, or if you're just ready for that next level and you're consciously ready, create it. We can create conscious change in our lives. And that kind of change can be anything from our daily habits to where we live, to changing jobs, to changing patterns, going to a different place, traveling, picking up a new hobby, starting a new exercise routine, eating in a different way. There are so many changes that you can consciously choose to create in your life, even going and networking with new groups of people, going to new kinds of events that you haven't gone to before. There are so many ways that you can consciously create change in your life, and I invite you to do so, especially if you want to feel expansion. Humans can be creatures of habits, and I think that people who are awake consciously are more conscious about creating change and living our ultimate life. And as we wake up spiritually, we really do want the best for ourselves. We want to live our ultimate life. We want to be our ultimate potential. And the thing that makes us wise is experience. The way we have more experience is trying new things, going to new places, saying yes to different invitations. And this can create change in our lives because it just takes one person, one situation, one opportunity that can completely change your life. And you can be proactive about putting yourself in situations and places where that change can come. And it can come from the invitations of other people. It can come from the environments you're in. So you have that role to say, okay, yes, I'm going to go to this event I was invited to. I'm going to go connect with friends. I'm going to go try that new restaurant. I'm going to go on this holiday, on this vacation. I'm going to go meditate in that new place, try this new spiritual practice, go to that workshop. All these things will create change in your life if you allow it to. Or you could just stay doing the same things you're doing. And this is when the second type of change comes around. But even before I get into that, the more experiences we have and the more interaction points we have, the more we invite synchronicity into our lives. And synchronicity, I believe, is the flow of the universe bringing you the very things that you are asking for. And it's like we can say, it's the flow of your manifestations coming to you. So, for example, if you think of someone and they call you, or you think of someone and you go to the store and you see them. And so it's just by you getting out into the flow of life and increasing the number of connections with people and situations and places, this is what helps the universe send to you what it is you're desiring. So, if you are creating big visions and big goals in your life and you've suddenly changed the vision or you've upgraded it in some way, it's likely that you are going to receive inspired action to take. And that might be call that person, go meet up with this person, go to that place, go to that event. And then from there, you start to experience things and meet the people you need to meet and get into the situations that are supportive and serving what you're creating in your life in the direction you want to go. And when we are consciously creating it, oftentimes we love it. We're like, yes, things are happening. They're moving. I'm living in flow. And you feel somewhat in control of your life. And most people like to feel in control of their lives. Now, the second type of change can be challenging for some people, because these are the kinds of changes that seem to come out of left field that we don't necessarily think that we're choosing. But I want to tell you, and I say but, not and, because you are creating it in some way. I believe there is a divine orchestration that is supporting you on your path to your greatest becoming, and that your life journey is supported by seen and unseen forces. So when things happen that could seem devastating or that can catalyze change that you are not planning, that you don't think you're ready for, that you're like, but I don't even want this. Why is this happening? I can guarantee you, when you look out at the bigger picture, it is serving you in some way. And these changes are bringing you on the path to your highest destiny, especially if that's your intention. Now, I know both of these kinds of changes, and I'm going to share about my personal experience. And even when I work with my clients all the time, especially I feel clients that come into my one-to-one container, they experience massive change in their life, especially the longer we work together, because the more goals and changes and transformations and energy shifts we can go through and that I support them in. And there's a rule of thumb that when you transform on the inner reality, meaning within yourself, you go through changes and transformations and up levels and ascensions, and your energy changes, inevitably your outer reality is going to change. But like I said, when you can plan for it, or it's the thing that you are planning, you're super ecstatic. But sometimes when it's something that you did not expect or that you did not want to happen, it can seem devastating. And I want to give you a few examples of this. And I have a few in my life that either seemed really devastating at the time, but now that I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God. And then other ones that are happening now, which have inspired this podcast episode, that I feel thrilled about, that I wasn't planning on, but I think deep down it was what I needed and wanted, but I didn't yet have the next plan or the next step. And now it's like catapulting me into expansion and change and infinite possibilities. So first I want to share about like the changes that seem devastating to us, that were like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't believe this. What? Like I can't even believe this has happened." So I always like to share this story, and I don't know if I shared it in the first podcast episode, but I'm going to share it again anyway because I know not everyone is starting from the beginning. But sometimes your biggest upset could be your greatest gift. And this was exactly what happened to me, which was the chain of events that I didn't know what was happening at the time, but that eventually supported me in leaving Western medicine for the beautiful free life I live today. So when I was in medical school, I wanted to do dermatology, like eat, slept, studied all electives, dermatology. I was told I had a 50-50 chance. I did some research in melanoma. I applied. I had a good number of interviews, 7. And they were like, yeah, it could be 50-50 chance. And the way the match system works is everyone interviews. Everyone who interviews ranks the programs in order. So for me, I'd have my 1 through 7 choice. And then all the programs who interview rank all of the interviewees, yes. And then it goes into a computer, and it's called a match system because based on the numbers and the order of the matching, you get paired up with whatever order. And sometimes there's not enough spots for the number of applicants, so some people don't match. So I had the craziest experience where I was in Thailand and it was time for me to find out about the match. And I saw that when I logged in that I didn't match. But then I found out that one of the programs I interviewed at had an open spot. And I was like, but what? How does this even happen? Like I interviewed there. I even did an elective there. And I got really great feedback on my elective there. So I was like, how? This is unheard of. Like, this is some kind of divine intervention. Like, it has to be. But I was upset. I was devastated. I still had a plan where my plan was do my intern year and then do more research and reapply, which is what a lot of dermatology applicants do because it is the most competitive of all of the specialties. But what happened was that I didn't even want to do that. This was around the time that I was experiencing my spiritual awakening, and I was traveling all the time. And after my intern year in the hospital, I started to see through the system and see that my gifts and my abilities were not really what I was meant to do and couldn't be fully expressed in Western medicine. My psychic gifts, my intuitive gifts, my understanding of energy without consciously understanding it. And I knew that when patients presented with certain aches and pains, that it actually wasn't a physiological problem. It was emotional. It was relational. And I started to see how we were just giving prescriptions for everything. And that wasn't the truth of my heart. That wasn't the truth of the fact that I knew that people would come to me and could come to me and leave feeling better than when they came, as if the treatment, the cure happened within the one session. So I didn't yet know about coaching and healing work, and I hadn't stepped into that yet. But I would say as a joke, I wish I was just a yoga instructor during my intern year because of the rigor and because I felt like a glorified secretary with all the notes I had to write and all the prescriptions I was writing. And I spent more time on the computer and writing prescription than I did with actual patients. And I love that face-to-face time with my patients, with my clients. So I didn't know, but my heart was already starting to leave. As much as I wanted more than anything to become a medical doctor, and I did, once I achieved that, I realized it was not what I wanted it to be. And it was not what I thought it would be either. And within me, there was a longing for a change, right? Even by making a joke, like a passing joke that was somewhat serious, if I wish I was just a yoga instructor, it's like I was longing for that change into something that I was really passionate about that made me feel really good. And little did I know that that summer after my intern year, I would take a one-way trip to Europe and never come back to Western medicine. But that wasn't my goal. Like my intention was not to do that. I ended my 3-month Euro trip in a yoga teacher training in Greece for a month. And there I went through an even stronger spiritual awakening. And I started to question all of my habits, like drinking alcohol and even going out, how late I would go out, like just lifestyle in general, where I thought I was pretty healthy. But I went to like this next level of like organic, super clean eating, no alcohol. I really changed my habits. I changed my life. I then even decided to move to Los Angeles. I changed my friend group. I changed everything. And with that, I changed my goal. And that's when I awakened to I am here to reach millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind. And every day it feels like it's growing even more. I'm like, no, I'm here to reach billions of people. And with that change of my compass, like the change of my intention, comes change in life. And then not long after, within a year after making that decision, then I appeared on the Fox reality show where I was in front of millions of people on a show about creating a utopia, where it was about me sharing and living and embodying all the things that I believe to be true: clean, conscious living, healthy living, relationships based in love and compassion, and living connected to nature and the earth, meditating, doing yoga, taking care of our bodies, conscious relationships. So I really started to just change how I showed up in the world. It changed my relationship to my family. It changed my relationship to food. It changed my relationship to everything under the sun. So that change that happened, that situation that catalyzed so much change, I had no idea it was coming. Even when I took that one-way trip to Europe, I had no idea that I would stay in Europe for 3 months. I even considered moving. I could move anywhere at the time. I felt so free. It was like a new chapter had opened and I was so thrilled, but I had cried the night that I found out that I didn't match, because I was in Thailand, so it was already nighttime. So I cried. I was so upset, but it was my greatest gift. It freed me. I would have been bound in contracts, and I couldn't let, going into like a prestigious program and then being like, oh, forget it. But the truth is, I think that I probably would have fell in love with it, but who knows? I wouldn't have had the spaciousness to go on my spiritual journey. So that would have went on the back burner. But my highest destiny was to awaken spiritually and to reach millions of people versus maybe the thousands of people I would reach over my lifetime working in a doctor's office. And though that is a beautiful profession, and I love dermatology because I felt like it helped people find their confidence again and build their self-esteem when their skin is clear. But at the same time, I knew that I was meant for something bigger. And I've already reached millions of people, and it's my intention to do it consistently. And it's my intention to, and there's so many ways through which to do that. And that's partly why I created this podcast, because my intention is for it to reach millions of people. And this is a place to receive free activations, free consciousness downloads for our expansion in mind, body, soul, spirit, spirituality, emotions, relationships, and all the different things I talk about. So that's where change comes, and we didn't plan for it, right? Like, nope, didn't plan for it. And where we can feel devastated and let down and disappointed. So if you were ever fired from your job, if you were ever broken up with and you went through a breakup and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I thought we were going to be together forever. And then you find yourself in an even better relationship, and you find yourself in an even better city that you lived in. And the only way that you were able to leave was because that other thing dismantled and dissolved. And sometimes things must dismantle and dissolve. So, and this is a whole other podcast, really, but it's sometimes these changes have to happen to bring us onto our greater path. And most recently, I've experienced a change out of left field. But even before I get there, I want to share, I think I talked about this in the last few podcast, one of the last few podcast episodes, where I chose to make a big change when I came to move to Ibiza. So I was living in Malibu. I had realized my dream of living beachfront in Malibu, but I realized like I had everything I wanted except I didn't have love. And I had everything I wanted, but it still felt like there was something missing. And it was probably just love, you know? And of course, I had love in the way of friends and family, but it was that romantic love and to create someone to create a family with and to share a life with, because to have it all and not share it with anyone is kind of like, what's the point, you know? Well, there still is a point, of course, but it's that much more gratifying. And there's a deeper level of fulfillment I find from being in relationship. And so there was a conscious choice point when I said, okay, I'm leaving Malibu and I'm either going to move to Miami or Ibiza. And I went to Ibiza and I chose to move there without coming back to LA to get my things. So they're actually still in storage. I'm going back in the next month or two to sort that out. But choosing to move to Ibiza was super exciting and expansive, and it was a choice point I created. But the choice of not matching into dermatology at the time when it's what I thought I really wanted, it felt devastating, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because now my life is like amazing and I can do whatever I want whenever I want. I work for myself. I can continue to reinvent my business, how my business runs, how I share my gifts with the world. It's just so beautiful to have that freedom of expression and that authentic expression that really allows the full totality of my being. Whereas being a dermatologist is quite, and any kind of profession that is more of a standard profession that society expects certain things from you, there's kind of a standard and guidelines that you operate within. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur or when you work for yourself or when you're some kind of creator, you can just really create whatever you want, whenever you want. And that freedom of expression is a really powerful and empowering thing to live. It's very fulfilling. So recently, just this weekend, on October 1st, my landlord of this beautiful Seaview home I live in, this modern home, I'm the first person to live in this home full time since they took them 8 years to build this house. It's a beautiful, like $2 million house, like just modern, so much light, beautiful floors, like just, it's like a hotel in a way. And my landlord kept asking, do you think you're going to stay for another year? I was like, listen, if I stay in Ibiza, I'm staying in the house. It's beautiful. I love it. And then I told him I guess the week before the 1st of October, because October last year is when I moved in. I shared, I would love to stay and that's my intention. So I'm going to stay. And then a few days later, he says, on the 1st, he came to spray because there's a lot of mosquitoes at the moment. Oh, my son, he built this house with his son. He's like, my son really wants to move into the house and use the house, so I won't be able to renew your lease. And this came out of left field. So it's like, okay, you have till the end of the month. And I'm like, huh. But instead, I didn't feel devastated at all. So this is another kind of change where it's totally unexpected. It's not what you planned for, but you feel expansive when it happens. And maybe there was a part of me that felt like, okay, like life is really good here. It's kind of routined. Like I go and swim in a beautiful private cove every day and I watch the sunrise and the sunset over the sea with the colors changing in the sky. And it's beautiful here. I film my podcast here. It's nice and quiet. And, I really got into a rhythm of life that was so beautiful. But also, I was hermiting. I was up in the north, one of the most northern points of the island. I would go down and socialize now and then. I'm not a big party girl. So for me, yes, do I love to dance? Absolutely. Do I love to go out every now and then and dance? Yes, but it's not something I do like, once a week max, maybe sometimes twice a week, some weeks not at all. So when I think of, people sometimes say, why Ibiza? It's definitely not the party for me, Ibiza, but it's the energy. There are beautiful crystals, like there's crystal beds on this island, and the rock is infused with crystals and the sea, and there's just incredible energy here, and that's why I love it. And also the north is much different from the areas where all the clubs are. And the nature here is just so beautiful. And I could see a part of myself being like, is this the best place? Like maybe Sardinia in Italy, or maybe a Greek island, or who knows, Cyprus. Like there was an openness. I felt an openness, or maybe even Mallorca because it's more mature. Like Ibiza is kind of like a Vegas a little bit. People kind of come here to party and get wild and crazy. And that's not really my energy. I had my fun times in New York City and Vegas and all that when I was younger. Like most Americans have that. And I spent 10 years in New York City through college and med school. So I went, I was out at all the clubs, all the restaurants, and it was a blast. And I still love fine dining and like I said, going to dance. And so there was an openness for me to go somewhere. But sometimes when we're comfortable, we don't consciously choose the change, as I was talking about with the first kind of change, where you consciously choose it. And I've been feeling a next level of expansion happening, even with the start of this podcast, and even with changes to my team, and even like going in 100% on my goals and mission to reach millions for the healing and awakening of humankind. And feeling comfortable here and just like, well, I can work from anywhere, but maybe there's somewhere better energetically too, because there's something called astrocartography, where based on where you were, when you were born, where you were born, it lays out the planets over the map of the earth, and it tells you which areas create what kind of experiences. So there are some places on the earth that are great for love, and that's where our Venus runs through. And there's some places on the earth that are better for money, career, relationships, or to do work, like shadow work even, or for our feminine to come through more. So different parts of the planet affect people differently. So for me, I really need to go to a place and feel the energy to know if I want to live there. And, we had thought about traveling to go see where we wanted to live, but we were just living our own life and traveling where we were traveling, but not to those places we thought. So we just thought, oh, it's easier to just stay. Creatures of habit. Like, let's just stay here. It's beautiful. We have a beautiful private cove. We have the sea view. Like, why go anywhere? Beautiful home. Why go? But then the change, I believe, was orchestrated by the universe, because I know within me, like I was feeling like something needs to expand, something needs to shift. And I wasn't quite sure what it was, but then it got served to me on a silver platter just a few days ago. So I'm moving again. Not sure where. I will stay in Ibiza until, actually, I'll probably go to the UK, and then I'm going to go to the US for Thanksgiving. And I have some other things to take care of in the US. And then we have an invite to Thailand. We have another stop in the UK. So we have a lot of travel happening. Basically, November and December will be full travel months. And then for the new year, I feel that we'll decide, like, where will we move? Where will we go? And there's like no plan at all. And when I tell you, it feels so expansive. It feels like infinite possibilities are available, and we've set the intention that the universe will show us. And that's really what I feel I want to share with you today is there's a difference between, and I'm going to get into this more in the next podcast, but there's your desires that you think you should have, which are a little more from the ego mind. And then there's like thy will, which is like your highest self will. And for those of us on a spiritual path, we really want what's thy will, what's for the highest good of all, what's for my highest timeline, my ultimate potential, my greatest becoming. That's what I want. And that's the truth. That is what I want. I don't need to be selfish and say like, but this is what I want because my person right now wants it, meaning like my ego structure now wants it. When we can release that and really trust that the universe, our highest self, our spirit guides, God, Goddess, the universe, the quantum wants to send us what's the best, like something better than you can even think of. This is when we must trust, stay open, and surrender to the changes that are unfolding. And when we can do that, that's when the magic of life really happens. And you can literally say like, well, I couldn't even plan that. And that's where I feel the unexpected changes come from. The unexpected, like there's nothing I can do. The choice is made. It's out of my control, but it affects my life. And I know that it affects it in a positive way. And so I'm so excited to see what changes are going to come and how this is bringing me onto my highest timeline. And of all of my offers, I do recommend my Ascension Code Surrender with regards to this topic specifically around changes and especially navigating changes that maybe you weren't planning. And in the bonus content, I'm going to go through a process of how to support you in navigating changes in your life that are happening, even if you might feel like, oh my God, I don't want this. This is going to be really supportive for you. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Dr. Nikki Starr, and I will see you inside the bonus content, inside Ascension Codes, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work. Sending love until next time.